We're getting up close and personal with all your favorite celebrities on the hottest weekend party show in the city, the Abbie Knights Show.
What's up, y'all?
You're listening to all the hits on the #1 party show in the city, the Abbie Knights Show.
Tell a friend.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back. We have a special guest on the show today, Armond Davis. How you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for having me. Try not to use the same word in consecutive sentences.
Yeah, you know how that goes. But, I do that sometimes. What can I say? But I will say about you, last I heard, you're definitely on a mission to change the narrative when it comes to funding for minority groups and women-owned businesses, which I think is super, super cool, especially coming from an entrepreneurial perspective. But before we dive into all that amazing information, let's talk a little bit about you. Where are you from originally?
So I'm born and raised in St. Louis.
Okay.
Missouri. Yeah, born and raised in St. Louis. Left there and went down to Tallahassee to attend the illustrious Florida A&M University, and was there, got my degree, my MBA in finance from there, and then moved to Atlanta in 2002 to work in banking and investments, and I've been in Atlanta ever since. Been in Atlanta for 20 years now.
Nice. You want to hear something funny? I actually lived in St. Louis. I lived on Olive and 9th, a couple blocks from the Arch. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It's a long time ago, but yeah.
yeah. You got to eat the good St. Louis Chinese food and
the Emo's Pizza.
Emo's Pizza and frozen.
I'm still not sold on Emo's Pizza, and my friends from St. Louis think I'm crazy. They're like, you're disrespecting our city. I was like, I mean,
A massive secret for you. I am also not sold on Emo's Pizza.
Thank you. You're the first person I've ever met that was like, not like Emo's is everything. And it's different strokes for different folks. Okay. We all got different palates. It just wasn't for me. I'm not saying it wasn't good. I'm just saying it wasn't my favorite. But St. Louis, right. I mean, in my mind, but we all have different opinions, especially because I love pizza. It's one of my favorite things to eat. So,
Me too. Me too.
When my friends were like, Emo's, I was like, yeah, excited. And then I tried and I was like, oh, okay. Not my thing, but thanks.
Yeah. Thin crust and plastic cheese just isn't going to get it.
It's not going to, no, it wasn't doing it for me.
Yeah.
So, kind of knowing your roots and where you come from, what set you apart as a kid based on what you're doing now? Did you ever have any unique or exciting interests? Because math must have been like a great subject for you.
Man, that's a wonderful and fascinating question. I have to think on that. So what set me apart as a kid in the context of what I'm doing today? I did not think as a kid that I was going to be in investments. I didn't come to that conclusion until I was well into college. I like a lot of young black men who went to college in the mid 90s. I went to college to study advertising because I wanted to be Marcus Graham from Boomerang.
Okay. Nice. Dreams can start from anywhere. I'm just saying.
Listen. I was going to be the Marcus Graham in real life. I was going to have all the 90s suits and shoulder pads.
Oh, you were ready.
And I was ready. I had all the plans. And I took my first marketing class and I was like, what is this stuff here? This is not for me. This is not for me.
Different world.
Different world. And so I pivoted and always loved psychology, but also didn't want to go to medical school and didn't want to write a dissertation. And so
I can understand that.
What I do that's really, really heavy into psychology, but is also really tied to business. And so I decided that sales was going to be it for me. And then it became, well, then what am I going to sell, right? Am I going to do pharmaceutical sales, medical devices? And I ended up coming to the conclusion that investments was where my passion lied, in understanding the stock market and patterns of bull markets versus recessions and bear markets, and really fell in love with it, and merged that with the fact that because of just pure stubbornness, when I was 8 years old, I declared that I was going to be an entrepreneur when I grew up, because I didn't like anybody telling me what to do.
Okay.
Mind you,
fair.
that is the worst reason to become an entrepreneur. It's just
Yeah.
because you don't want somebody to tell you what to do, because there's always somebody that's telling you what to do.
True. But there is a nice difference in having that balance of being able to plan your own schedule versus being told what your schedule is gonna be. So that is really cool. Me personally, I was never a fan of math classes when I was in school at all, so I would hate being in accounting or any of that. But I've always found it incredibly fascinated and wish that when I was in school, there was a mandatory class that spoke to our financial literacy in this country, especially when you're talking about your credit score, proper investments, understanding what a stock market even is. So this is going to be super interesting for me. I guess based on where your passions are, is that what inspired the creation of the Paragon Group?
Well, yeah. So what inspired the creation was, so I came out after I moved to Atlanta. I worked at a couple of banks in portfolio management, and then I did my first M&A deal. I bought a small construction business, and in 2006 I bought that business. 2007, I thought I was the smartest guy in the world. 2008, I realized I was not the smartest guy in the world. And by 2010, I was on the verge of bankruptcy. And the recession was in full bore. And we really had, if you recall at that time, we had there was no light at the end of the tunnel. Like, no one was saying, like, oh, you only got another 6 months of this, or you only got another year of this. It was really everybody, even all the experts, were just like, we have no idea when this is going to ever turn around or change. And so I was on the verge of bankruptcy. I had to have my paperwork filled out, had my last little few dollars in my bank account pulled out and put into a cashier's check to the bankruptcy attorney, and drove to the bankruptcy attorney's office. And I could not physically get out of my truck to go into his office and hand him the paperwork. Just couldn't do it. Couldn't do it. And so I sat there in front of the office for about 30 minutes, and my body wouldn't move. And so I said, well, if I'm not going to go in here, then I've got to figure it out. So I drove back home and vowed to figure it out, and battened down the hatches, made some really difficult choices and decisions. Many times where I didn't get paid and didn't receive a check, but managed to turn the business around and position it to grow and to thrive as we began to come out of the recession. And very proud to say that I never laid off an employee during that time of the recession. Now, there were many times where I didn't get paid, but that's one of the lessons of entrepreneurship, right? You benefit the most as the owner of the business when times are good, but part of being the leader is when times are tough, you're the last one to get paid, right? When times are tough, you
have to take care of your people, right? I wish more businesses understood the value in having that loyalty, because when you take care of people, they take care of you, and that's a full balanced system right there.
Absolutely. You have to take it. Your most valuable resource is your human resource.
Yeah. Thank you. That's a good one. Yeah. I'm going to keep that in my little memory bank. That's a really good one. More people should practice by that standard, but they really don't live by that. So why are you so passionate about funding for minority groups and for especially women-owned businesses? Because I will say, as a woman who has tried to start several businesses, finding funding, especially because I'm considered a minority because I am Spanish, is nearly impossible. And I have male friends who didn't even have as good of a business plan as I did, and they were getting funding offers left and right. So what makes you so passionate about this? This is cool for me.
Well, for me, it comes out of that experience, right? As an owner and operator of businesses, I've owned and operated over the past 16 years multiple businesses in Atlanta. And so how I ended up with, launching my firm, the Paragon Group, is that I wanted to merge my investment knowledge and experience from earlier in my career with my experiences in owning and running businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And so, the best way to do that was through venture capital. And so I launched my firm. I say when I look at businesses to invest in, I look at it through the lens of an investor, but with the empathy of a founder, because I
I
have
love that.
been I've been there, and I've done that. I've had to make the really tough decisions. And so why I'm so passionate, frankly, because I grew up with a very industrious, hardworking mom. My mom worked for IBM for 40 years. She,
Wow.
while working for IBM, she went to school. It took her, I believe, it took her almost 8 to 10 years to get her MBA. She was going to school at night. She was doing all those things and balancing all of those things. Between her and then my grandmother, my father's mother, and both of my grandmothers, just really strong and powerful women. And so I grew up and was raised that to believe that women are more capable than men are. And I have seen it borne out even when I think about at my time at Florida A&M. The women that were in school with me were just stellar. And so I really do believe that women entrepreneurs are a truly untapped resource for our community, for our society. And then the other aspect of it is that, people of color in general are often overlooked in terms of investments and funding, which is a systemic issue, right? Because it's
It
not because
is.
of lack of talent. In fact, I would certainly argue that we do more with less than any other group. And so, my investment thesis is that because women and minorities are the most disadvantaged by the current system, they
Mm-hmm.
will lead in the innovations that come forward that take and move society, into the future. And so, therefore, if that's the case, then if you invest in these people at an earlier stage in their development, then you can make outsized returns. You can make better above average returns. And so I really believe that if you want to see sustained investment in women and minority entrepreneurship, then
Mm-hmm.
you have to make that strong business case for it. Of course, there's a social reason for it to happen. Of course, there's an emotional reason why it should happen. But if you really want to see sustained investment, you have to make the business case for it. And the business case is there. The
Mm-hmm.
business case is there. The lead in innovation, the better returns, the data is showing all of this now. And so I'm very comfortable in investing and working with these founders exclusively in terms of trying to grow the business.
Yeah, the systemic issue in this country is a serious problem. I can't even tell you the amount of conversations I've had with people who are oblivious to this, who are like, no, racism isn't yes, it absolutely is. You don't understand racism until you're someone that has to experience it firsthand to understand not only the severity of it, but the impact it has psychologically, financially, emotionally on people. And it's always overlooked. It's like, get over it. It's not that serious. This is just how it is. I hate it when people say that. This is just how it is. No, it's
Yeah.
not. There's always a way to create change. There's always a way to create new systems that, like, people like you are empathetic to a real problem and are finding sustainable solutions for people that are in need, not just for an easy resource, but for a tool to help them grow and hopefully create wealth, generational wealth for those that come after them. So I think that's really cool. I wanted to know if you wouldn't mind explaining what the importance is when it comes to awareness of equity in this country and the cultural disintegration towards minority groups.
Well, so since we're having an investment conversation,
Mm-hmm.
I'll ask you dive deeper in a little bit in terms of when you're talking about equity, because are you talking about equity from a social perspective in terms of leveling the playing field? Or are you talking about equity from an investment perspective in terms of ownership?
Well, when you talk about it, essentially they can become one and the same, because
Yep,
social groups become prioritized when they become financially wealthy or successful, to where they're considered equal in certain groups and certain meetings and tables. So I feel like they kind of live together in a way.
absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. That couldn't have, we could have rehearsed that answer. That was a fantastic answer. And so, in that vein, what I'm striving to do, and I'm certainly not the only one that's out here that's striving to do this. I don't have the market cornered in building equity amongst underserved communities, right?
Mhm.
But what I'm trying to do is create what I call is an ecosystem of exchange, right? Where we
Mhm.
invest in female and minority founders, and in the process of working with them and helping them to grow and scale their business, then we get to a point where we have what's called an exit, or we have a liquidity event where we either sell the business or we receive significant investment that allows for the founder to become more liquid. We create a wealth event, right, for the
Mhm.
founder. Well, in the process of doing that, not only have we helped that founder and their family and their descendants for generation, but we've also just created another minority investor, right? And so now they have had their business and we've helped them to build their business, and then we've sold the business or we've gotten a significant investment. And so now they can take some of the funding, some of the money that they receive from that, and they can start to invest. In fact, I actually require, if I invest in you as a founder, I require that you mentor another founder either in your geographic area
Mhm.
where you live, or in your industry. If you don't do that, I'm going to pull your funding.
Wow, I
I'm
love
serious
that.
I'm serious about it. And so, in that process, so what we're doing is, by the time, 2, 3 years, 5 years down the road, when you are approaching your liquidity event, you've already been working with at least one other founder, entrepreneur that's coming up behind you.
Mm.
And so then you can invest alongside me in that founder, right? And you've been sharing all of the knowledge and the experience that I've been sharing with you as a founder, right? With
Right.
that founder coming up
So that
behind.
you can grow.
It's important for me to do that. There were people that took the time to share their knowledge and their experiences with me. I certainly didn't get here all on my own or by myself. And so a big part of that is to pass that knowledge on and to pass that and to pay it forward.
I was going to say that gives a whole new meaning to paying it forward. I've never heard of a business that prioritizes that principle, which is extremely important when you're talking about growth, because it's a full circle moment.
Well, and frankly, it's good business,
It
right?
is.
It's good
Mhm.
business. Like, that's the fundamental principle, right? You have customers, you serve your customer, you
Mhm.
serve your customer well, you have a product, right? So for me as an investor, my product is are the founders that I'm invested in, right?
Right.
Because the better that they do, the more well off they are, the better their businesses are, the easier it is for me to attract more investment capital to then put out into to more founders. And so it's important to me, it's necessary really for me as a venture capitalist to really ensure that the founders that I'm working with have the tools, not just tools in terms of P&L, profit and loss statements,
Mhm.
income statements, balance sheets, but I'm also really working very closely with founders to help them become the best possible version of themselves, right?
Mhm.
One of the things I say to my founders is that your business can't outperform you, right?
Right.
And so if you haven't dealt with all your traumas and you bring a lot of baggage to the table and you're easily distracted and you're not able to stay focused on the business, and so you're only able to function at a level 4 or 5 as a person, then your business is going to function at a level 2 or a 3.
Right.
And so if we want the business to be successful, particularly when you're talking about early stage founders, when you're talking about pre-seed, seed stage founders, where the businesses are really, really founder dependent, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so if I can help you as a founder get to where you're working through those traumas, you're moving past those mental roadblocks, those upper limit problems, right? Then
Mm-hmm.
I can get you where you're functioning at a 9 or a 10 as a person, then your business will come along with you. And then business will perform right there with you. But we've got to help, our founders, because we have unique challenges in our communities,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And there are things that we deal with and things that we have to overcome, not just physically but emotionally, right?
Right.
And so if I can help you to become the best version of yourself along this journey, then I believe that your business success will follow.
I love that. It's a completely, like I said, for me, it's a fresh perspective on an everlasting problem that people just pretend to sweep under the rug. It's like if we don't see it, it's not there. What have you found to be the catalyst in most of these circumstances? Because obviously you're living this every day because you're the one, you're building your business, which is always a challenge because you have your highs and lows, but you're also helping create a foundation for other individuals to get to the point that you are today.
Yeah, I think that, a big part of that is the fact that I have lived through it. When I was in the throes of the recession, when I was really struggling and having, in those moments, you really do feel like, oh, why am I even going through this? Why am I
Yeah.
dealing with this? Why do I have to go through this? But really, everything is in preparation, right?
Mm.
For you to continue for you to walk your path. And so for me, I look back on it, I'm so grateful that I went through those challenges, because when I sit across the table from a founder now, I'm really able to say, look, I really understand what you're going through, and I'm really able to really relate to the choices that you have to make, the challenges that you're facing. So these are the things that I did to really try to help to focus, right, and
Mm.
overcome these things, and understanding that there's not a one size fits all fix, right? Everybody has different issues that they bring to the table and things that they wrestle with. But I think that the solution always starts with empathy.
Yeah.
And I think that if you can really master being truly empathetic, and there's a big difference between empathy and sympathy, right? So
Mm-hmm.
sympathy is, oh man, that sucks. I'm really sorry that happened to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Empathy is, I've been there. I know how it feels to feel overlooked. I know how it feels to give your all to something and for it not to turn out how you wanted it to turn out. Like you said, I felt you. I could hear it in your voice when you said, "Man, I've had businesses. I've had plans and ideas for businesses. I built those businesses, and I couldn't get any funding. And I sat and watched men that I know who didn't have as thorough of a plan and have the business and the detail that I had, and watch them go and get funding and go off and do things. And I listen, I know how that feels. I know that twinge you get when your friend when the guy calls you and says, "Man, I just got $1 million. I'm going to go get this Porsche." Yeah, and you just
And they just rub it in. And I'm
yeah
like, but I have so much more to offer. Like, I
yeah
could bring so much more money. Like the
yeah
way that I had everything mapped out. I mean, there was a portion that was giving back to charity. It was a full circle operation with something that had legs to last for a very long time.
yeah
And nobody really wanted to hear the idea. It was kind of like, and you need, after a certain point, one thing about people that have an entrepreneurial mind is that you have to have help. You need funding in order to get to the next step. So individuals can only grow so much. You can only go so far. It's like people that say, oh, me, 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 me. No, it takes a team. As they say, it takes a village.
yeah
You have to have someone that helps. Anyone that's successful in the world right now, Mark Cuban, any of these big billionaires that are doing great things in the world, right?
yeah
They didn't just come into wealth because they stumbled into it by accident. Someone saw what they were doing, they believed in it, they made the investment and gave them an opportunity to grow and become what they are today. Without
Yes.
that initial step, where would you be? It always takes someone to give you that first opportunity to open the door and say, here are the tools, here are the resources, let's help you grow, let's build together. And I think that's a conversation that too often people don't have. And I think also the problem with this is the stigma in today's society. People don't really want to see people they know succeed. It's like,
Mhm.
I'm okay if you're doing well, but I don't necessarily want you to do better than me. And that's
Right.
a big problem in the world that we live in today. I wish more people had the perspective that you have today, because this is necessary. And I think if more people took the time to focus on this, there would be a lot more financial freedom. But then I guess the control and the power would shift when, you're talking about creating new vessels and new cycles like that. So, as far as concerned, as far as your perspective and looking into the future, what changes are you hoping to create in supporting these groups by providing knowledge and helping create the proper ecosystems for them to succeed?
Well, really two things. The first is that I want to normalize
Mm.
investing in and being that person who says to our female founders, that says to our minority business owners, hey, I do see your vision. I do believe in what it is that you're doing, and I'm going to help you to do that. I'm going to be that. That's my goal. I'm going to be that person for
Mhm.
the founders that I invest in. My only regret is that even if you gave me $1 trillion of assets under management, then I wouldn't be able to invest in every qualified
Of course. Of
founder,
course.
right?
Yeah.
And so I know that I'm going to have to say no to people. I know that I'm not going to be able to help everyone, but my focus is on the ones that I am able to help, that I will. And then the second part, because it's interesting, you mentioned when you talk about, you people wanting to attract the investment and having the people to say yes, and then you want to build this ecosystem. Really what we want and what we need to do is to build a self-sustaining ecosystem where we are the decision makers, right?
Correct.
Because there's always a ceiling on how
Mm.
high you can go when you're relying on stepping outside of your community for your funding, for your capital, for your guidance, for your expertise,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
And so, I want to normalize it from the perspective of they to where the outsiders or the majority are seeking to come in and asking us to include them to get in our investments, because we've established such a track record, we've established such success, right? But I also want for us to build an ecosystem where when we do have these founders that are coming up, that and I can call my neighbor and he can call his cousin and she can call her uncle and her aunt, and we can come together and help to push these founders and bring these founders forward.
That is a really beautiful thing to do. I really want to commend you on that. I know there's a lot of individuals that are contributing to helping make these changes and implement these changes in the system that we have today. But it's really cool when you can really sit down and have a conversation with someone who's lived the story that they're wanting to contribute to. It's very easy to come from wealth and say, oh, well, I want to empathize with somebody, but to really feel what that is like is completely different. It's a different level of understanding and connecting with someone. Let's talk a little bit, because you've had so much that you've done. Let's talk a little bit about funding after the NFL. What does that mean to you, and what was the purpose behind that?
Well, I mean, I think I'm sure you're familiar with the statistics, right? You have 70%, I believe, of as an NFL, NBA, or pro athletes at some point have financial difficulty. Significant percentage of them end up filing for bankruptcy. I think that it's not just important, but it's really necessary to help when you talk about financial literacy and educating these brothers that are coming out of these leagues where you make a tremendous amount of money at a short period of time in
Right.
a early stage in your life, right? And
Hmm.
so it's great to be 21 years old and be making $10 million a year, right? Frankly, for me, I would rather build my business, my investment firm over time where I can be 50, 60, 70 years old and still be making that kind of money, right?
Right.
And not be on average 27, 28 years old and my peak earning years are behind me.
Right.
And I think that we can change that and we can help to change that because if we get, and we got some athletes, particularly the NBA athletes that are getting involved in venture. Kevin Durant does a ton of stuff in venture capital. Andre Iguodala also does a ton in that space. We know that Nas, I believe that maybe I read something a while ago that said Nas actually makes more money from venture capital than he ever made from rapping and from music. And so we have some that are getting involved in it, but I think that it really needs to be a comprehensive process of really educating these brothers about the opportunities to invest in people of color, founders of color, and really begin to elevate and be a catalyst for
Hmm.
elevating these businesses. It's good because, like I said, we make the emotional case for it. It's good and sustainable. You help your people. You're doing these things, but also it sets you up and puts you in a position that inevitably, when your playing days end, you still are able to make choices and be a leader and possibly even through your investments, make as much or even more money than you made while you were playing.
You know, a couple of great examples of that are Shaquille O'Neal and LeBron.
Sure.
They've come in and they've multiplied, and it hasn't. I look at a lot of these people, especially when you're talking about major wealth and success. It's a completely different level of success. Even someone like Jay-Z, who's out here giving advice to people that are younger coming into the industry, telling them, you know, don't throw all your money at cars and jewelry and all this stuff. Invest it. Understand about, you know, the stock market. Understand digital currency. Know your opportunities, and, you know, be a fountain of knowledge. And that's a very different type of investment in someone. It's very easy to say, oh, I'd like to do, but when you give someone knowledge, that's a tool. That's a tool that they gain, that they can take and grow with for years. Then it may even allow them to seek new opportunities that weren't even top of mind. I've met Kevin Durant before. He's a super nice guy, definitely very focused businessman. And I think more people, I wish it was publicized more. The athletes that you have out here, the public figures that are giving back, that are helping to uplift, I wish these were some of the headlines that some of the media and press outlets focused on sometimes, because they do so many incredible things and it's underserved. I don't even think there's so many people I've met over the years, because like I told you myself, I couldn't find funding, right? So I spoke to tons of people and people weren't really familiar with options or opportunities like that. And I think that comes back to having that knowledge key factor in knowing what your resources are and what's available to you based on, you know, where you're currently at and your level of growth. How do you think, because obviously we're talking about people of color, and regardless of what anybody says, we know this is a problem in this country. It doesn't matter how you flip it. You can turn around and pretend to not see it, but it's definitely there. It's still a very real problem. It doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon, which it's unfortunate that after all these years, people say we've made so much progress. No, we haven't. So how do you think, I mean, this is just my personal opinion. I think it's so ridiculous the way that the system is set up, because I think it's set up for people to fail. How do you think social and racial injustice impacts opportunities for Black business owners and potential funding as they're coming into these opportunities?
Oh, well, how much more time we got? Um, you know, that goes back really, it goes back 400 years,
Yeah.
right? In terms of the impact. I mean, if you think about it, we had in Reconstruction, we had uh, black people in the Senate, we had black people as mayors, we had black people owning land, we had
Mm,
people that were in these positions in the 1880s,
mm,
right? 1870s, 1880s were in these positions. And then Jim Crow came, and fear, right, drove white people to implement these rules and these laws, and also fear drove Congress not to enforce the laws that they had on books to allow people to
mm,
have equity. And we talked about equity a little bit earlier. And so the impact of this is felt for generations. When you still have kids today who are first in their family to go to college, right? And when you had in the early 1900s, late 1800s, early 1900s, where black people couldn't pass their wealth down from generation to generation. So even if you did accumulate wealth, you couldn't pass it along. We didn't get to participate in the Industrial Revolution, right? Because we were systematically frozen out
mm,
as from being entrepreneurs. And that we came up with and created products, and we couldn't get patents, we couldn't get trademarks for things, so we were systemically frozen out of the Industrial Revolution. We were systemically frozen out in terms of the land ownership revolution. You remember? Well, you may. I'm not going to say you remember like you were around at that time, but our
mm.
grandparents, when they could barely acquire land and barely acquire property, when they were coming up, right? But land was inexpensive at that time, particularly compared to what it's worth today.
Right.
And so we weren't able to participate in that. We were redlined out of that. They systematically designed it to where our neighborhoods were undervalued, underfunded, and therefore undervalued. We didn't even really participate in the first tech boom, right? In the 80s and the 90s. You had the stock market crash in 87 that happened. And we always are, we being underserved groups, so persons of color, underrepresented groups,
Mm-hmm.
we are always the most affected by economic calamity. And so we're the last to begin to participate when things are going well. We didn't really even start getting serious venture money into our communities until after George Floyd's murder in 2020, right? That's mid 2020. By the beginning of this year, in early 2022,
Mm-hmm.
uh, they had cut that faucet off. They had said, well, the economy's starting to slow down, and we have to have a quote unquote flight to quality, right? Which means if you haven't had 3 or 4 exits as a founder, then you can't get funding. If you haven't raised 3 or 4 funds as a fund manager, then you can't get allocation. Those policies all negatively impact us as a community and make it extremely difficult for us to establish ourselves and get a foothold to where we can focus on the future more so than focusing on just surviving in right now.
And that's the conversation that becomes
Yeah,
uncomfortable for a lot of people. It's the reality of what we're dealing with today. So I
yeah,
I always think I love seeing any of my friends succeeding
oh
because I
yeah,
know how hard it is just to be able to plant a seed and watch it start to grow, let alone fully bloom, or if we're really talking about metaphors, really bloom or grow into a massive tree that's around for generations. That's when you
yeah,
talk about creating real change, is being able to implement tools that last for multiple generations, not just for a good time right now so I can go stunt and floss that I've got all these things that are so expensive, this jewelry. At the end of the day,
yeah.
what does that do for you? You're not
That's
really
right.
creating tools. And that's what I loved about LeBron when he went and he created a school. He didn't need to put that money into that. He didn't need to take time out of his day to create an environment for people that are underserved to have access to a greater education. Right? It's so much easier to just take that money, put in your bank account, go buy a yacht, go live lavishly, do whatever it is you need to do. But that forward thinking and understanding what the chain reaction that you're starting and what you're implementing and instilling in these kids is beautiful, because you're giving people the opportunity to dream.
Absolutely. It's the parable, right? It's the feed the man a fish versus teach the man a fish, right? You feed a man a fish, you feed him for a day, but if you teach him how to fish, then you feed him for a lifetime. And I think that, we are huge proponents of teaching our entrepreneurs how to fish. The entrepreneurs are the lifeblood of every community, because that's how your dollar circulates within your community, is through the entrepreneurs, right? And so it's not just important, but it's necessary for a community to ever get to a point where it can have some measure of independence, right? For its entrepreneurs to be supported. And so that's really what we're trying to do here at the Paragon Group, we're really big on teaching the founders how to fish, right? And so, and then requiring that they then teach other founders what we've taught them.
Right. And that's what you call instilling growth in people. When it's not an option and you have to give, not only that, but maybe to someone that wasn't set in that type of principle, you're establishing a whole new pattern for a whole new generation of individuals, because someone that may not have been thinking about paying it forward, it now becomes a way of being, because you're letting them know, hey, I'm here to support you and to help you. But if you can't help somebody else, we're going to take that away. We're going to take that back, and we're going to give it to somebody else that understands and believes in the system of what it means to pay it forward. So I think that that's so impressive and so meaningful to look at a situation with a perspective of change, because it's a lot easier to just be agreeable and settle for what's comfortable for most than to be the person that creates change. So I think that's so cool. What's the dream for you?
I mean, the dream is to have as broad of an impact as possible across underrepresented communities, really globally. The dream is to build one of the most successful. It doesn't have to be the largest, but the most successful venture capital investment firms in the world, and success being defined as helping to create wealth in underrepresented communities. And so in doing that, if I can do that, then I'm happy. And also, I'm going to put 100 kids through college, all expenses paid. That's a dream too. I'm going to do that.
That's incredible. I love that. That's so inspiring. I hope that people that are listening to this conversation understand the conversation that's been had and the importance when it comes to the takeaways that come with it, because they always say that you can accomplish more as a group when you come together. So I think this is really impressive. I'm so excited to see what kind of growth you end up having. What's the big plan for 2023?
Well, 2023 is raising more capital to invest in these talented and highly capable founders. And that's my mission. That's what I'm going to be out doing. Always looking to meet more talented founders who are looking for investment. Always want to have a deep pipeline, right, of founders that are ready for investment. But then also we have the process of raising the capital and getting the investment money in. So I tell founders all the time, I'm a startup founder too. It's just that my startup is a business that invests in startups.
Right. Which most people don't think of.
Yeah.
And that's the beautiful thing about change and about growth and understanding your resources, because
Yeah.
you knew once you found a tool that worked for you and you had that opportunity, you knew what it would take to create that for somebody else. So
Sure.
it's really impressive to see what you're doing. It's creating such a positive impact. If there's anybody out there that wants to check out what you have going on, and obviously what the Paragon Group is doing, where can they go to get this information?
Our website is paragoninvestmentfund.com. I am on LinkedIn. I don't know how you give your LinkedIn, but Armond Davis, Armond Davis, and I'm in Instagram at Armond Davis, and actually Twitter is at Armond Davis. Instagram is at I am Armond. So
Oh,
you can reach
somebody
me
else
any.
must have taken the name, huh?
Somebody took that name. Let me tell you.
First
You
of all,
gonna
I
get
would
me
have been
started.
like, first of all, I'm gonna need you to give me my name back. Thank you.
Thank you.
Uh,
The person that has literally, I think they have maybe 3 posts since 2014, and they have my name, and so I'll get it back one day.
so you are I am. I love it.
Am Armand on Instagram. Twitter, I did get Armond Davis on Twitter, but Instagram, I am Armand. It's Instagram.
So you guys already know where to go. This has been such an amazing conversation, so eye-opening. And I just want to thank you for taking the time to come and talk to me about this today.
No, I'm really grateful to you. And the last thing I would say to you, I know you had your experience with your business and your startup that you had, and people didn't want to have the conversation with you about it and funding. But something that I do always say, I encourage founders is, continue to push forward with that. The universe put that idea in your head for a reason. It chose you for that. Don't ask people for permission for you to use your gifts.
Yeah.
Okay. So you have a gift, and that spark was put in you for a reason. And so continue to use that gift, and you'll be amazed at how the universe will make a way for you to continue to do so.
I love that. I'm going to revisit that, and I'll end up probably chatting with you about a couple other things. I mean, it's like I said, it's been such a pleasure, ladies and gentlemen. Armond Davis, I look forward to speaking with you again soon. We're going to take a quick break, but we'll be right back. You're listening to the Abbie Knights Show.